guys a preview of what has transpired with the publication system since in the last couple months, and as well as to have an opportunity for colleagues to present questions and really to have kind of an informal chat. So I see we're somewhere in the order of 55 people who have joined this call. Just a couple housekeeping issues. I think in the interest of time and to keep this as productive as possible, perhaps what we could do is have, well, first everyone mute themselves as we hear the presentations. And if colleagues can save their questions until all three presenters have finished, that would be great. And you can use the hand function to indicate that you have a question. You're also welcome to put questions and comments in the chat. And we will be monitoring those and collecting those as we go. But yeah, so let me just introduce the chief scientist, who will Andrea Henwood, who will give us some remarks on the state of play for the new publication system, as well as two other presenters. Angeline is going to talk to us about the knowledge repository that Unep has and some digitally enabled capabilities for us to manage and to store and to search what we have on hand. And Brian Matugia is going to give us a snapshot of the new automated system. So without further ado, Andrea, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jason, and hello everyone, and thanks for spending your afternoon, or whether it's your morning or your night, depending on where you are, in actually talking about the new publication system. So as Jason said, we're actually going to try and have a fairly short presentation and leave lots of time for you to ask questions that you would like to. So as you're aware, we have a new publication system and process, and we're actually working out the details of that new system, and you're going to hear some more about that today. So where are we? We've established the system and process, including committees, and the hot news off the press for today is that we have a publications committee which assesses concept publications and publications as they go through the process. And we have an SMT publications board that makes the final decision on whether a publication actually goes on to be published. And the chair of the publications board will be our ED, Inga Anderson. So that's a really good thing, and I think indicates the significance of publications to our ED and to the executive, and just why this is so important that our products actually receive the attention that they deserve, and why we're putting so much effort on this. So we will be, of course, following up with information about this, and we'll let you know. So system and processes established. We have a publications committee, an SMT publications board. We have identified institutional products, which we call spotlights, series, and we have one flagship, which is our Geo, that's established now. We have types of publications with associated workflows, and I'll just take you through that again today. We have actually got an agreed publications list for this year. This has been based on the submission of concepts into the publication system, approval or recommendation, I should say, by the Publications Committee, and then approval by the SMT Publications Board. We have piloted an automated dash or automated publication system with just the concept phase at this stage, and we're joined by our enterprise solutions group and Brian, who've been working on the production phase. And so we'll talk to you a bit more about the automated publications dashboard and how that's going. So we have a production dashboard in development, which we are hoping we will be able to use by June for the mid-year intake of any publications that got missed in the first half of the year. We then have them for the second half of the year. We have guidelines in development, and we already have some information available on We Collaborate. So if you're not aware of that, great place to go and get some information. And some other new news, we have actually initiated some science communication training. We're going to be working with a consulting group who are going to help us develop a training product. We'll be seeking some interviews and some surveys in the next couple of weeks, and we will actually then be piloting some science communication training. So keep an eye out for that. We're also looking at peer review training. We already have some recommendations for you to actually do your own self-learning peer review training, and there's information in the guidelines on that. But we're going to consider whether we have specific peer review training for Unep staff. And the big issue, and I'll talk about it a bit more because I know it's an issue for many authors and project managers, is the identification of peer reviewers. And we have very few peer reviewers in-house. We are having to rely on external people, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is the snapshot of our publishing system homepage, which is where you put in a new concept for a publication. And as we move into the production phase, you will be able to see a publication from its concept, its approval by the board, and then right through to ultimate publication and then into our repository, which Angeline is going to talk to today. You've seen this before. This is actually the publication types and the type of workflow. If you remember, we have types of publication and we have workflows and we have approvals. In more detail, if we have a full workflow, which is for a flagship, a spotlight, or a series publications like Frontiers, like we've got a life cycle analysis for Plastic Spotlight, for example, then this would require plagiarism checks, gender checks, maps, peer review, science review, i.e. myself, costing, communications and launch plans, science editing, citations, what sort of cover, the title, subtitle review, sign off by a director, and also some of them by an ED. So for all flagship, spotlights and series publications, I will have to approve it, but some of them could also be approved by the ED. The next workflow is the technical report workflow. This is the majority of our reports at the moment, and you would be required to have plagiarism, gender, maps, peer review, costing, the sorts of plans you've got for disseminating the report, citations, cover page, but that's sign off by director. I don't need to sign off, and I will not be looking at all technical reports. I will be looking at some reports through the system, but not all of them. And then for all other types of publications, we have the so-called partial workflow, which is where you still need to have your agenda considerations, your maps. You need to look for internal consistency, citations. Sign-off can be at either the branch head or a deputy director. Oh, someone's got their... Can everyone mute themselves? Okay, thank you. And so through all of these workflows in our automated system, when you put in a concept and you say, I'm going to have a spotlight publication, the system will automatically identify that you need plagiarism, gender, maps, peer review, science review, etc. With a partial workflow, you put in and say it's an educational guideline or a toolkit or something like that. The same thing, the system will actually require you to check for maps and for some citations, but your sign-off will be at branch head level or deputy director. So the digital publication system is going to help us, rather than you trying to sort out what you need for a particular type of publication. This should be inbuilt at the system. At the moment, that isn't in place. We've got the concept part of it landed. We're working on the production system, but we currently still have monthly meetings for publications. So at the moment, contact your publishing focal point or the publishing unit for any queries. There have been a number of questions raised about gender and diversity mainstreaming. And I want to make it clear that every single report, if we're writing something, a toolkit or a manual or a policy brief, we should be considering gender and diversity as part of our work. So even though we have not said, if you're developing a toolkit for something, you must have a gender review, we would expect in the sign-off of those publications where it's not explicit, you would still be taking into account gender and diversity considerations. So we are asking authors and project managers, etc., to be aware of what gender and diversity mainstreaming is and how that should be considered in our publications and our work generally. It just should be something that we do as a matter of course. And I guess that's why we're asking you to please consider that up front. And of course, we also need to consider gender and geographic diversity in our consultants, the members of steering groups, panels, authors, and reviewers as well. And so the new automated publication system, certainly when we're talking about peer reviewers, already asks questions about gender and geographic diversity. But I encourage all of you at the outset of anything that you start to put pen to paper on, that you actually consider these gender and diversity type issues. And there is a lot of information already on We Collaborate that's been compiled on how to actually take into account gender issues. And of course, our gender team, Susan and Raymond and Janet and co, they can certainly help you in terms of final gender clearance or guidance on particular aspects. In terms of peer review and scientific credibility, as I said at the outset, our problem at the moment is we do not have enough peer reviewers in-house, and what we're hoping with the automated system is that in the future, you'll be able to just say, okay, I need an expert in geohydrology or water quality or something like that. And you'll tick in that you need expertise or a peer reviewer in that area. And in the ideal world, we'll have a drop-down menu and it will give you a couple of people who might be able to do that peer review. We are not at that point yet. So in the meantime, what we're asking you to do is identify at least 2 peer reviewers for technical spotlight or series publications. And of course, I'm aware that some of these publications have many more reviewers already than that. But you want people who've got expertise. But what you really need to talk to them about is who's the intended audience and what is the purpose of the publication. When you're reviewing as a peer reviewer a publication, you can look at the technical issues and you can say, yes, well, you haven't considered this new body of literature or whatever. One of the really important things is to understand the audience and the purpose of the publication, because it actually informs the way you deliver a review. So when you talk to your peer reviewers, we don't want to just say, yep, here's a report, please review it. Provide information about the audience and the purpose and what you're seeking to achieve with the publication, because a good peer reviewer can actually help you a lot. And so we do recommend that all project managers, authors and peer reviewers complete the training from Elsevier. A couple of people have done it. They've said it'll take about 4 hours, but actually it provides some good training and gives you some information about the sorts of things that people look for when they're looking at publications. So in terms of also starting out with your publication, I know many of you have already started with those concepts that have been put in the publication system, but this is where you really need to think about what the purpose and the proposed impact of your publication is, no matter what it is. And start with, what are you seeking to achieve? Why are you actually writing this piece? What's new in this publication that hasn't been published in the past? What do you add to the global conversation about the particular topic? Do you build on our work and publications which have been released or in the pipeline? And it's really interesting. We've started to actually analyse a bit more of the information on what publications on key topics have we written on. We've written an enormous number of publications over the last 5 years, and most of them have not necessarily got to audiences or have been cited or have been picked up by anybody. So it's really important to actually see, what have we produced before, and is this new publication really going to be fit for purpose and actually drive the change that all of us want? And of course, find out what has been produced from across the house. It is amazing, we still are seeing duplication across the house, and that's simply because, we're all very busy and we don't necessarily have time. But find out what's been produced in the past and make sure that what's actually being produced in this next round is going to be different, it's going to add value, and it's absolutely going to move the needle on something. So the next bit of our presentation, I told you I'd be quick, is Angeline Jampou, and she's going to talk about the knowledge repository. And Angeline, I'll move the slides on for you if you want to talk. Angeline, are you there? Okay. I'm not sure what to do. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go through these slides, and is Brian there? And Brian can talk about the production phase.
Yes, we can do that, Andrea.
Right. I'll just move these slides on, Brian.
Okay.
Actually, they've just frozen on me. That'd be right. Yeah, they're completely frozen. Okay. I'm going to stop presenting, and I can see Angeline there, and I'll try and share again. Okay, Angeline, just quickly, you're not there. Okay, Brian, I'll move to your slides.
Okay.
Here you go. Take it away, Brian.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Too much confidence with my hotspot or with my headset. You can, right?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So let's get started. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Brian, the slides aren't moving on. Oh, there we go. Okay.
All right. Okay. So hello, everyone. As Andrea has just shared, the enterprise solution section, and CSP has been working with the Chief Scientist Unit and in the EO and the communication division to digitize the publication process. The expected deliverables are a system to digitize the publication process and a user-friendly dashboard to visualize the process's data. My name is Brian Mutugi. I'm from the Enterprise Solutions section in CSP, and I'll be sharing with you our progress towards achieving a fully automated digital publication system. I'll start by giving credits. There is a team that has been working diligently in the background to make sure we achieve that as fast as we can. Starting with my predecessors, Michelle and Silas. Currently, we do have Franklin, who is doing amazing, in terms of, interpreting these requirements to functionalities. And we do have Saiful Ridwan offering oversight and administrative guidance on this. So just a point of highlighting that there are a lot of people in the background working diligently to make sure that we achieve this digitally automated system. So where are we? So the first thing is the digital concept submission. Currently, concepts can be submitted digitally through the system. More to that, we have also automated the approvals and quality checks. We are going to look into this deeper on the next slide. But more to that, we've also offered publication approval trails, meaning that publication authors can be able to use the system to track where their publication is at and who is the next person or staff member who needs to act on their publication. More to that, we created an autonomous administration backend. This is a feature exclusive to the publications team to make sure that in case there are changes in the future about the publication system, then Andrea and team can come in with the need of the team and just update those details. But that does not mean we won't be helping. It just means that they have that autonomy. So on this screen, we are having the email approvals, and this is a feature that we created to ensure easy approvals, which means that, for example, once a publication author has created a publication, the director will get an email informing him or her that there's a publication that has been created and they need to approve that, and they'll be able to approve just by clicking the button in their email. There'll also be an option of opening the publication and being able to see more details about it. But to make the process as easy as possible, we created that functionality that, the director or the focal point, can be able to just click that button and be able to approve the publication. This feature will also be available to the board representative and all those focal points who need to perform quality checks on the publication. Next slide, please. More to that, as I mentioned earlier, we have also offered the approval trails functionality, meaning that using the system, publication authors, directors, or people who are just concerned about a specific publication would be able to use the system and be able to monitor the progress of the publication. So, for example, with this publication, you can see that it has been submitted, obviously, but more to that, the director has approved it and the board has approved it. And you can see its current status on the overview section, saying that it's pending action of the production phase reviewer, which means now that this publication is ready for the gender review, peer reviews, and all those policy checks that are in the production phase. Next slide, please. So more to that, as I mentioned, we have offered an admin backend functionality. Again, the main purpose of this is to offer autonomy and adaptability, meaning that Andrea and team can be able to have some control of the system, meaning that they can be able to change publication types, release date, events, and not just changing. They can be able to introduce new ones. They can be able to delete the outdated ones, and those changes are going to be reflected immediately on the publication system. So in case there are any changes in the future, this feature will enable them to manage that and incorporate it in the application system. Next slide, please. So what's next? So right now, as Andrea has mentioned, we can use the publication system for the concept phase. But more to that, we are working really hard on the automated production checks, meaning that the submission of the draft, performing the peer reviews, performing the gender reviews, and all that. After that, we are going to do the testing, and the duration for that is supposed to be the 1st April, which has already passed, to the 18th April. So that is what we are working on currently. More to that, we are going to provide an insightful and harmonized BI dashboard that is going to incorporate data from both the publication system. We're going to incorporate data from the knowledge repository and other sources that we might identify as useful in terms of enriching insights for our publication processes. More to that, we plan to integrate the system with Recollaborate and Unep'S website. With Recollaborate as a point for users to interact with the system, and Unep'S website mainly for the dashboard and just giving the information that we can be able to give publicly. More to that, we are planning to integrate the system with knowledge repository so that the publications that have been created on the system can be able to be stored sustainably in the knowledge repository that Angeline is going to present about. Next slide, please. So the publication system is not going to run in isolation. It's going to be interacting with other systems in a harmonized manner through Unep'S data warehouse. So as you can see, the publication system is in the middle. It saves its data to the Unep'S data warehouse, where other systems will also be sharing, storing their data at. So, for example, Print, will be storing its data there. We do have a knowledge repository mapping there, and from there we are going to be drawing insights and getting the data to feed our BI dashboard. So the dashboard will mainly have data from the publication system, but enriched from other systems through the data warehouse. So again, the system is not going to be running in isolation. It's going to be saving its data on a pointer where all these other systems store their data, and more dense and insightful analytics can be drawn from. More to that, you can see the BI dashboard will also be available on Recollaborate. We're also planning, as I mentioned, to have the BI dashboard available on the Unep'S website. Right, next slide, please. So what's the impact of this? I'm sure Andrea has mentioned some of this, but just to add more to the digital process being eco-friendly, its features will streamline the publications process by 1, eliminating hard stops and deadlocks. 2, something that I didn't include over there, avoiding duplication, because before you create a new publication, you can be able to get in there, search whether it has already been created or not. More to that, it's going to ensure timely communication and reporting through the automated emails, notifications going to the focal points, informing them that an action has been performed on the publication system on a specific publication, and because of that, they need to perform a certain activity. Again, we are going to, as I displayed earlier, as I shared earlier today, they'll be able to perform the approvals or rejections directly through their emails, making that process faster. And more to that, and most importantly, we are going to preserve the process's data and be able to draw insights from it. So just in case we need more of the information about the certain publication in the future, we will be able to fetch this information from the system, and we are going to be learning, and that is drawing insights from all the publications that are being submitted to the system. Thank you.
That is wonderful, Brian. Thank you very, very much. Now, Angeline, have you got back online? I know you were.
Can you hear me, Andrea?
Yes, I can. So what I'm going to do, Angeline, I'm going to take down the presentation. I'm going to put it back up where your bit starts. Hang on a sec.
Sure.
As you know, I mean, it's amazing. I love these systems, and then until you have to actually use them. Okay, let me find your bit. Hang on a sec. Okay, there we go, back there. Okay, I'll just go to the first slide for you, and you can kick off. Go, Angeline. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon, colleagues. Once our publications are finalized, they're ready to be consumed. But before they are consumed, they need to be discovered. And for us to allow the publication to discover, the content need to be properly organized. Here in Unep, we use the DSpace-based knowledge repository to organize our content. One advantage of the repository is that it provides a centralized storage space for all Unep publications. We don't only store the publications in the repository, we also make sure that we use a metadata to extract all the elements that serve an access point to access these documents, and that that can allow them to be consumed and hopefully produce the desired impact. For instance, if you search an author not in the repository, if you go to Google and Google Detlef van Vuren, that's a person, you will come across a list of Unep publications where the author has contributed. So that is the benefit of really spending time to extract all the elements that will maximize our documents' chance to be consumed and hopefully applied. So the access points that would create also allow us to group the documents into topics, into specific collections, and these are also access points that allow users to get to our documents. Next slide, please. We also use our repository as a tool for content dissemination. If you go to the landing page of the knowledge repository, you can search the repository, you can browse it using the access points that we created when we were organizing the collection. You can search the entire repository, or you can search within collections. Once you get to the files, you can get to the PDF, or you can just see the page with the file, including the file and the associated metadata. And from there, you also have a viewer that allows you to read the document on screen and determine whether or not you want to download the document. And most importantly, this document page allows you to share the document on social media. Next slide, please. So this is the screen capture of the landing page of the knowledge repository. It gives you the collections that are available, but you can also search. You can see that you can search by date, you can search by author. You can also, from this page, you can go to the list of our flagships and spotlights. Just a disclaimer to say we're going to rename flagships to flagships and spotlights, from this page, you can go to unep.org, you can go to weather, and you can also go to the relevant information resources. But what I want to point here, no, the previous slide, thank you, Andrea. So you can see on my left there, you can see those thumbnails. This is actually our flagship and spotlights. We've created a visual effect there. When you get to the real site, it is scrolling. This is actually to tell the users, you are here to search, but hey, look at this corpus of publications. These are our flagships. These are our spotlights. This is what makes the identity of UNEP. You may want to click and discover. So we sort of try to influence the behavior of the user there. Next slide, please. So these are all the access points through which you can browse the repository. You can browse by language, by issue date, by title, if you know the title, by SDGs, by country and region. Next slide, please. I think it's stuck, Andrea. It's not moving.
Okay, mine's moving, but yours isn't. All right.
Oh, okay. Yes. So this is an example. Thank you, Andrea. This is an example of a documents page, and in this case is the emissions gap report 2020. It gives you the description. When the user gets here, he can read the description and know whether the document is interesting. But you can also get the link to the page, but also the associated file. Here we see that there's an English file and a Chinese file. So you can click of any of those to download. But if you went below, of course, there's no below here, there will be a document viewer that will allow you also to browse the document on screen. Next slide, please, Andrea. So what's the process? The process is we have divisional focal points. In each division, we have at least one focal point that uploads the document to the knowledge repository. Then when the document is uploaded, the library team has a notification to go and review that document and either approve or send the document back to the submitter for revision. But the overall support and administration of the knowledge repository is with Enterprise Solution. Next slide, please.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, so what I wanted to mention at this point is that the next step, of course, we had a consultant that work on the knowledge repository to improve the user experience and the search functionality. And we're still taking back that work. But next slide is also to align with other platforms, such as the publication system that has just been presented, and also the web, unep.org and the weather. And of course, Enterprise Solution is always there to support. We would want to work with all divisions. Should their needs not yet be accommodated, it is not a static process. We're always ready to work with everybody. And of course, Enterprise Solution is there to support and implement. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Angeline. I've already seen we've got a few questions. So I think that we've had there are three talks. And so Jason, you've probably been monitoring the questions. So I'll let you ask either Brian, if you can put your camera on as well, and we'll just and Nikki is here to answer questions on logos, intellectual property, and things like that as well. So, Nikki, if you can also put your camera on, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
Great, and thanks, colleagues, for the questions. Just a couple things there. We've created sort of an FAQ for frequently asked questions with responses. These were questions that we that were generated in the town hall. Some of your questions actually are raised in that, and what we'll do is we'll recirculate that. It's also going to be available on We Collaborate. And there are some newer questions, so we'll address those here, and anything else that we can't, we will populate. So one of the questions coming in, I think this is more of a comment, is the connection to Weather. And so, of course, this is the automated system is an internal facing. This is for our own organization. And so, and I'll punt all the questions to you guys in a moment, but let me just go over. So there's a comment here about the science communications training and how that's going to be rolled out, and I can speak to that. The plan is to roll this out in 2022 as a pilot. We will create the training, which will likely be sort of a multimedia, a training tool. We would love very much for everyone, this to be open to everyone. Exactly how it gets rolled out will, stay tuned. But in the meantime, we're developing that. There's a question here. Oh, my screen has frozen. Okay, well, I'm on a question here from Solange on how publications focal points will be associated with the automated system, and how could we keep track of where we stand on each of our division's publications. Andrea, why don't I hand that to you?
Okay, so I'll answer the question that was raised first, which is the link to Weather. So eventually, of course, we want this to link right through, so that if we have a website, whether Weather is behind that or whether Weather is a portal to information, data and knowledge, we hope down the track there will be a link and that you'll be able to search whatever you want. And that includes any publications that might be in the production phase, for example, or those that are going to come out, or those that have come out. We are not there yet. So I also saw another question about how we're linking all of those with the website. So I think we've got a workshop coming up in mid-May, and some of these issues we are yet to sort. So at the moment, this will be an internal automated system that will take everything through concept, production, publishing, and into the repository. And hopefully then we will actually be able to have those systems talk to each other, so we have something seamless, so no one really knows what's happening in the back end. So the intention is that in the future it would be linked, but it won't be for now. Good question, focal points. So again, this internal system is meant to be an open, transparent system. So you should be able to go in and search what is in the current publication system, where it's at any point in time, and so that you can keep track of where it's coming. The really useful thing for this is we don't want the 277 publications that we've got all coming out in October this year, for example. So, certainly the ability to interrogate the system, and focal points will have that ability. Thanks, Solange.
Question from Killian. When will the publishing submission form be updated according to the new system?
Nikki, I'll throw that to you.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, Killian, for the question. So basically, when we are able to go to the production phase of the system, it means that actually the publishing submission form will no longer exist, because all this information will be captured in the system. We are also in the process of revising the UNEP publishing guidelines, so all of it will come together. But I think at this moment, because the production phase isn't live yet, we have continued with the publishing form as we have it, as we have given guidance to people, for example, following the partial workflow for their publications, is to ignore those fields that do not apply. So the director doesn't need to sign, because we do know that for the partial workflow, the director doesn't need to provide sign-off. So we will not at this point update the form, because there's too many fields to update. Rather, when we move to the online production system, that will replace the submission form. Thank you.
Okay, there's three sort of related questions that I'm going to pass to you, Andrea. The first is Lud asking, do I understand correctly that a publication of a 3-page policy brief would go through the system? Before you answer that, there's another question about the guidelines, whether the guidelines apply to the MEAs, the conventions, in this first iteration. And relatedly, there was a question. Actually, why don't you answer those two?
Okay,
we'll
I'll answer
scroll
those
down.
too. So this is it's again another great question, and you know, as you would be aware, there are always, when you come up with types of publications, there's always a variant of some sort. So the general rule is that if something is only for internal consumption, i.e. it's a 3-page policy brief that you're putting, I don't know, to the ED or some other group within Unep to inform our policy position, it shouldn't go anywhere near the publication system and review. And indeed, if you want it stored, because we do want everything stored, because then we actually have that information base to be able to go back and look at in the future, it would sit in the repository, for example, so we have a record of it. If, however, this has got a Unep logo on it and it's going to FAO or another organisation, then yes, it either needs a branch chief or a director sign-off. So it clearly would be a partial workflow. Why? There are a number of policy positions, and in fact, we've got a set of them right now that have significant implications, and they have not been agreed by the organisation in terms of the policy content. So there does need to be some review to ensure that we're actually putting out consistent messages across the house in that particular area. So again, it depends on who it's for, whether it's external, is it going to have a logo on it? And I would argue that if it does and it's going externally, then a branch head should be checking it. And ultimately, if that's not the case, we want to know about it, because that's great information that we should be accessing. We shouldn't be reinventing the wheel simply because someone may not know that that policy brief exists. So in relation to MEAs, yes, this would apply to MEAs as well, because again, this would have Unep's logo on it, etc., and therefore would need some level of review to ensure that that's appropriate, etc. There will be some MEA publications that won't go near our publishing system. Nikki, did you want to follow up on that?
I think it's clear. Unless there's any follow-up question, I have nothing else to add.
There's a number of colleagues who are asking about where they can access materials, including this presentation. So we will circulate that. We'll also upload it to We Collaborate. Nikki, I wonder if in the meantime, you can actually put a direct link for our colleagues to the We Collaborate portal where they can find this information, including the descriptions of, and I think Siri was asking about the topology of the different types. So that's in a number of the presentations, but we can also direct you to where you can find that information. There was another question, let's see, that Sari has asked regarding urgent and unforeseen publications that come up in the intervening months between submissions and things that are not expected. And she's asking for a little bit of elaboration on that workflow.
Yeah, so great question, and we have actually thought about that, because there is going to be a circumstance where something comes up with the things that are affecting the world at the moment. We possibly have some issues that we might want to urgently get something written on and release it. So we have introduced what we call an exceptional case, where you would actually apply to the SMT Publications Board via myself and Dan Cooney on the Publications Committee, and then we would make a recommendation out of session for the board chair to approve that. So we're trying to have a very light touch for something that is exceptional. It does mean that there would need to be a rationale for why this, if it's something unforeseen, like a war or something like that, then that's straightforward rationale. But this will only be for those exceptional and out of the box type situations and it's a direct application, you would still put a concept in there. It would still go through to production, but we can actually manually do that, Sari. So thank you for the question. I hope that answers it.
Thanks, Andrea. There's a question from Tina here about how do UNEP reviewers, like the general reviewers, fit into the system? She says, we are not exactly a peer review, and it would be best, based on experience, that colleagues can communicate with us during the drafting process. Would that just be expected to be done online? And it's a really good question. I'm going to give you that one, Andrea.
Okay, so again, great question. So yes, what the expectation is that would be done in the system, and there is some provision for you to do that review and to actually provide your review in the system. Why? Then the person who has to sign it off has seen that you've done that review, has seen the comments that you've made, and have they been taken on board? And often, many of you will know that when I'm asked to review something, I will actually ask for the peer review comments so that I can have a look, have they actually been taken on board? So the intention is that, again, you can go in, have a look at the peer reviews or anyone else's comments or a director's comments or mine. And they're available for everyone to see so that you can actually make an assessment of the significance of the issues, whether they've been taken on board, and so they can go through to the next part of the process.
Thanks. Two questions here for Brian and for Angeline, actually. The first one is regarding the timeline for the automated system. Brian, I think you had indicated that our ambition is to have this operational by June. It is going to be incremental, but you can speak to that in just a moment. And then afterwards, Angeline, if you can address a question also by Miriam about the repository. And does this start as soon as the online portal is operational, or does it also include the existing already published publications for which we also have a WeDocs repository? So I'll, Brian, if you can maybe take the first one on timing.
So thank you, Jason. So again, on timelines, that's a really good question. It's something that we've been discussing with Andrea and team, and getting really to understand, what is required and when is the latest that we can achieve that. So yes, we can be able to achieve that by June. And I'll just reiterate that the only remaining features now are the production phase approvals and quality checks. Once we do have that, and then we have that discussion with Angeline and the user people in terms of just planning the integration of all these systems, then we'll be able to have even particular timelines on when we can achieve this. But by June, we will be having a fully operational system. Do you want to add to that, Andrea?
No, we have to have it done by June because we've got new concepts that we're going to put a call out for concepts for mid-year. So we have to move all the concepts into production phase. So, Brian and the team have been working very hard, and they're going to be working very hard for the next month or so. So yeah, we're hoping all of that will be landed by June. But perhaps the next question to Angeline.
Angeline, just before you answer that, there's another question that's directed to you. It's a very good question, actually, by Suzanne, regarding our evaluation reports and whether or not those will be accessible through the knowledge repository, in addition to the earlier question about the links to the existing WeDocs repository. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. The knowledge repository includes the content that was previously there with the same links. Is that the question?
Yeah, the first question is regarding whether we have done that migration, but also what becomes of the WeDocs system.
No, we've done the migration. It is the same. It's the same database. We've just improved the functionalities. So the migration is there and the content is there. Although, as I said, we are still sort of doing some cleaning up, but the content is there. It is searchable. It is in place.
Great. Yep, that's clear. So it has been subsumed. And then the second question there.
The second question by Susan is that evaluation repository is actually, the evaluation office is independent. And it's always been our understanding that evaluation should not be seen as being part of UNEP. So evaluation repository still exists as a community separate from the knowledge repository community. But I will have a bilateral with Susan, because we had a conversation when the consultant came, just to make sure that we have a clear understanding of the way forward.
Thanks, Angeline. Okay, a question here by Sophia. Should we include all written products we produce? There are some guides we are producing related to countries or regional work that we must deliver before mid-year, but this request hasn't been done in advance to include. Then at the end of 2021, it would be great to have a clear picture of the dates and timings from now on, but we also need to see how to make this fit with our existing commitments. Nicolene, do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. So yes, if it's, as Andrea already said, if it's an external facing document that has a UNEP logo, it needs to be included. The call for, the mid-year review will actually go out pretty soon. So I don't think that we should now go to make an exception for these, these country reports. You can put them in for the mid-year review. And, by the end of June, you will have the response. So, yeah, we will send the guidance on these very soon. But in principle, if you look at the overview of typologies that Andrea shared, it really should be included in the plan. And this also includes publications that have a UNEP logo, but not necessarily UNEP copyright. So we really want to know what goes out from the organization. Because even sometimes publications that are led by another organization, but UNEP still has the logo on it, they are on the same topics that we put out publications as well. So we really need to have this coordination across the house. So we would like to request everyone to be as complete as possible when you make your submissions for the mid-year review of the plan, and make sure that you capture what you want to publish in the rest of this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. Andrea, a question for you from Nora. She's wondering about reoccurring publications and those that sort of monitor reoccurring metrics or similar metrics year by year for a specific sector, and the guidance or the encouragement for us that was discussed earlier to have novel information in our publications. She is wondering whether we're discouraging, or this new system discourages recurring publications.
Yeah, I think I think it really depends on what it is, who the audience is, and what the value proposition is for that being produced every year. So if it's part of a program that you have a reporting requirement every year, then of course that's going to be approved every year because it's a requirement of the project that you're doing. I would encourage everyone, though, to think about what they are producing and whether they are actually, what they are producing is having the impact that they want to have. And maybe if you've got a recurring publication, maybe it's better as something that's on the web every year that gets updated on an annual basis, that then gets greater review by a broader audience. So this is an opportunity to actually think about what we're doing, whether that, and I don't know what you're talking about, Nora, but I think it's an opportunity to think about that. So no, we're not saying you have to stop doing recurring publications or don't do this type. What we're asking is to start thinking about what you are doing, because we are producing, as a small organization, we produce an enormous amount of publications that are having no impact whatsoever. And I think we've got to be honest about that. And we simply need to be looking at what we're doing so that we're putting our efforts and our combined efforts into things that are actually going to make a difference. And that if you're asking other parts of the organisation to review all these reports and, all partners or whatever, we want that quality aspect as well. So I guess my response to that is have a think about what it is, who the audience is, what, you know, if you've got contractual arrangements, that's very straightforward. If there's an opportunity to do things differently, maybe now's an opportunity to actually think about what you'd really like to do with that recurring publication. And we have, you know, we have institutional recurring publications, i.e. emissions gap report, adaptation gap report, the global outlooks for waste and chemicals and things like that. They are recurring publications. We're not going to change those at this point in time. So thanks for the question. It's a good one.
Thanks, Andrea. A couple more questions here. One that I will give to you, Nikki, on the UN RED program, the joint program that UNEP is part of with FAO and UNDP, and whether those publications will need to go through the system. You can speak to that. Solange is asking about INF docs for UNEA. Solange, these do not need to go through the system as is, however, with the caveat that some INF docs are also out-facing publications that do have a logo and that are distributed for broader consumption. In that case, they will need to go through the system. Nikki, if you want to address the UN RED question from Florian.
Yes, thank you, Jason, and thanks, Florian. For UN RED, I'm not sure who is the copyright holder, and we can look at it if you want. If it's UNEP, then for sure it has to go through the publications process. And it has to go through the checks and balances that we introduce, like the quality checks. And if there is another copyright holder, whether it's UN RED or one of the other organizations, because the UNEP logo is in the logo lockup, you still need to follow the guidance on like logo inclusion. A new logo policy will be circulated soon. It's currently under review by Executive Office that will outline the process, and it will also need to be put in the publications system as a non-UNEP copyright report, which will have its own approval process. But yes, it does need to go through, depending on who is the copyright holder. And you can reach out to me in case you want any further information about this specific UN RED case.
Thanks, Nikki. Question from Benedict, Andrea, for IPBES, IPBES, and IPC publications that have a built-in review process.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Yeah. So those are not.
No.
Those are excluded from the system and are well outside of this what's envisaged here. So we can. Thanks. We can move on.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think you've got it well and truly covered. But thank you.
And then a question here from Ron: can publications that are planned for publications beyond the end of this year be submitted? Good question. In the plan now, because some publications are years in the making, and we would need to get clearance before starting the work. Andrea, do you want to take that?
The answer is yes. So there is no reason why you can't put a concept in when the call comes out next month for 2023. And indeed, I think that's really useful, because then we also know what's coming in 2023 for the next lot that come in December. So if you are organised and you have that couple of year process, I would actually encourage that. I think that's a good idea.
Great. So that takes us to, according to what I see, to the end of the questions that have been posted. And colleagues, if we did miss something, or if I have missed something, we will go through these. I do want to invite anyone and everyone. You know, we have a critical mass online, and we have some extra time. And if colleagues have other questions or want to open up a conversation, perhaps what you could do is raise your digital hand, and we'll call on you. Yeah, please, Solange, I see you've raised your hand. Come in.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me?
Faintly,
Okay.
but yes.
Thank you. Just have a query, a reader request. In the past, we have struggled about the call for inputs for the publications plan, because I want everybody to be aware that at least at the economy division, when we receive this call for inputs for the plan, we first have to consolidate all the inputs internally. So it's not a question of asking colleagues to put the concept proposals online, and then Sheila would discover what is proposed. It's not at all the way we proceed, because we want to have an overview of all the requests that comes from colleagues and the various teams, and then it's up to branch heads to make a review to decide whether they should go forward. And then it's at the deputy director level, and then it's at the director's level. So that's why I really want to emphasize that we cannot in 2 weeks or 3 weeks just provide the concept proposals. And that's why last time it was very hectic for us. And I do apologize again, Andrea, for this, because we had first to collate all the inputs in a table. It was very, very time consuming. And I think I'm going to reach out to Brian to see also how we can adapt and align our table proposal online, so that we exactly have the same kind of information provided, so people don't work twice on the same things. But it's really time consuming. So we need at least 1 month for this exercise to make sure that we can provide everything on time for the publishing boards to review them. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think my advice on that is start now. You know that the call is going to come out in early May for submission in early June, for a publications committee review in mid-June, with an SMT publications board at the end of June. And you know, the call last time was the first time we did it and was a pilot. So we've also learnt a lot about the process, what's required. So, and remember, we're still getting this automated system right. And I guess what I'm hoping is that once we've done this lot, then you will already know that by December you'll be putting in those for 2023, and you'll be organising the time frame in terms of the processes that you need to be put in place to get that coherence across the division and ideally across the House. So again, another really good questions, and all of these really help us to actually revise and look at how this system's going to work, because I think you all know I hate administration. I want it to be as simple and straightforward as possible. I know all of you do too, but we do need to tighten up how we're doing things so that we're actually producing great stuff. So Solange, my advice at the moment is start now if you can, so that by early May you've already, or you know, basically by the end of May, you'll be able to submit concepts for consideration. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks.
Well,
Thanks, Andrea. There's a couple more questions that have emerged in the chat today, as you're asking about publications, meeting documents, and meeting reports that include Unep'S logo. So no, those do not go through the publication system. That said, so legal documents, the inf docs, the documents that we create for intergovernmental meetings, those do not go through. That said, of course, I would kind of invite everyone to make sure they're well acquainted with our logo guidelines and where you can actually put a UNEP logo. But thanks for that. Good question. A question by Sophia here. The 2 windows, right? So the next window is May. There are 2 windows, and the next window is May, and you'll be alerted. Everyone will be, but you know these timelines, and we'll put this up on We Collaborate again, and we'll put this in the frequently asked questions. But the idea here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, is to keep these time windows consistent, so that from year to year and cycle to cycle, everyone knows.
Right. So that we have the June SMT board meeting, and well, the call comes out in May for June submission. The call will come out in October for December, so that we are making decisions, and of course the exceptional approval when that is required on an ad hoc basis. So you know, and I guess we will see whether these 2 calls work. Maybe in the future it will be a case that anyone will be able to submit at any time they like, but we will still stick with the publications committee and board meetings at particular times so everyone knows what that decision is, right. And never apologise for questions, Sophia. That's exactly why we're having this, is to answer these questions. And as I say, it's good for us too to get the questions, because if something like that is not clear to you, then it means we need to explain it better. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrea. Thanks, Sophia. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and let me just switch over and see if anyone's asking for the floor. This has been great. Thanks very much, and we encourage you to continue. Angeline, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Jason, since we have some time, I just remember something that Nikki asked me to touch on, was the difference between the knowledge repository and the website, the unep.org. So think about it like a showroom and a warehouse. So you have everything in the showroom, in the warehouse. In this case, this is the knowledge repository. It has everything that UNEP produces. It stores, the knowledge repository store all content from UNEP. Now, the unep.org provides an additional voice to promote these documents. So if you have a showroom or a warehouse, you can choose to go to the showroom or to the warehouse. But whether you use the knowledge repository or the unep.org, you are being directed, the document is hosted in the knowledge repository. It is whatever the route the document lives in the knowledge repository, and that is where you will access the document. I hope this is clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Angeline. No, I think that's very clear, and I think an important distinction, and others have raised similar questions. Yeah, the functionality for the repository was built around our needs as UNEP, and it's really intended to be a tool for us in how we develop and our own knowledge products, and to know where things are at. And it's similarly, and you might want to talk to this, Andrea, I'm not sure, but the same question could be raised about Weather, and again, I think that by and large, Weather is an out-facing tool. Of course, the ambition is to include functionalities for Weather to help us streamline and be more efficient and access data. But in where we are right now, I think that Weather is focused on an out-facing piece, and the repository is really a tool for us. But I don't know if others want to speak to that or add to that.
No, I think that's right. But ultimately, we want increased ability for people to search for our products on key issues, and we want to be having much more impact in terms of the number of downloads and accessibility of information. So this is why this is a good opportunity to look at what and how we're doing things. And we haven't got this perfect yet. We're on the journey, and I guess if there are no other questions, I might just thank very, very much my partners in crime, Angeline, for her work on the repository. And actually, we meet every week. So this poor team has been going at this for a while. So we're actually very fortunate. And Brian, and we can't see Franklin and Georgina and co, but I know Brian and his team have also been doing a lot of the work, and a lot of frustrating work when things don't work right, and then they've got to fix it again. So they've got a bit of work to do, and I know that they'll probably be calling on many of you to actually help test some of this production phase as we go into things. And of course, Nikki and the comms team, this also an enormous amount of work goes into reviewing the publishing process, providing that advice on bits and pieces. And again, we are getting to the point where we will be having hopefully really good, clear guidance on all the issues that you've raised. And we're not that far away from that either. So we will be putting out a draft guidelines, And again, any questions, clarification, things, you need to let us know so that we can clarify that and provide the responses so that you've got the right information to be able to operate with. So as I say, a great team. They've been delightful to work with. So it's actually terrific for me because I get to continue to work with them for the next couple of months at least. And thanks everyone for your attendance today. And thank you, Jason, for chairing this session. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all for your time. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.